You don't default on a debt to the most powerful empire on earth. You certainly don't do it by inviting the Sultan's treasurers and their elite military escort into your court, only to slaughter every last one of them. In 1594, one man did exactly that. He wasn't just a prince, he was a warlord who decided his kingdom's debt of 1.5 million gold florins would be paid not with coin, but with Ottoman blood. This is the story of a man who declared war on the world, united 3 kingdoms against impossible odds, and was betrayed by every friend he had. This is the story of Michael the Brave. Before the blood, there was business. Michael wasn't born to be a king. He was the son of a merchant, a man who clawed his way up through the cutthroat world of Balkan politics. Wallachia, his homeland, was a pressure cooker, a vassal state to the Ottoman Empire, a punching bag for the Habsburgs, and a pawn for the Poles. To survive, you had to be a predator. Michael learned this early. He traded horses, jewels, anything to build a fortune, not for luxury, but for power. Every coin he earned was a stepping stone to the one thing he craved, the throne of Wallachia. And in this era, thrones weren't inherited by right, they were bought. So he paid the price, borrowing heavily from the very Ottoman masters he despised to secure his crown in 1593. The crown was heavier than he ever imagined. Being Prince of Wallachia meant being the Sultan's chief tax collector. He was expected to bleed his own people dry to fill the coffers in Constantinople. The debt he'd taken to gain the throne was a chain around his neck, and the Sultan's men pulled it tighter every day. They demanded more grain, more timber, more sons for the Janissary Corps. Mikhail saw the path ahead, a slow, humiliating death for his country, and a legacy as a puppet. He was trapped. But Mikhail wasn't the kind of man who stayed in a cage. He started making quiet alliances, sending secret letters to the Pope, to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II. He was planning something unthinkable. He was planning to burn the cage down. The breaking point came in November 1594. The Sultan, Murad III, demanded repayment of all outstanding loans. He sent a delegation of his most powerful creditors, accompanied by a 2,000-man Janissary detachment to ensure cooperation. They arrived in Bucharest expecting a terrified prince to hand over his treasury. They walked into a trap. Michael summoned them to his court. The air was thick with tension. The Ottomans were arrogant, confident. The Wallachians were silent, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords. The creditors read out their demands, the numbers echoing in the hall. Michael listened patiently, his eyes never leaving theirs. When they finished, he didn't offer gold. He gave a single chilling nod. It was a signal. In an instant, the court erupted. Michael's soldiers, hidden in plain sight, fell upon the Sultan's men. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. The Janissaries, the empire's elite, were cut down where they stood. The wealthy creditors who had thought they owned him were slaughtered without mercy. By the end of the day, the entire Ottoman delegation was dead. There was no going back. This was more than defaulting on a loan. It was a declaration of war spat in the Sultan's face. Michael had just signed his own death warrant and the death warrant of his entire nation. And this was only the beginning. If you're finding this untold story of defiance compelling, take a moment to subscribe. The stakes are about to get much, much higher. An empire like the Ottomans doesn't move quickly. It's a vast, lumbering beast. Michael knew this. He knew he had one season, winter, before the full might of the Sultan's army would descend upon him. So he didn't wait. He went on the offensive. In the dead of winter 1595, he led his small army across the frozen Danube, deep into Ottoman territory. This was unheard of. He wasn't fighting a defensive war. He was taking the fight to the enemy's heartland. He sacked fortresses, burned towns, and routed every Ottoman force sent to stop him. It was a campaign of pure shock and terror, designed to show the world that the lamb had become a wolf. News of Michael's rampage sent shockwaves through Constantinople. The Sultan was apoplectic. This wasn't just a rebellion, it was a profound insult. He summoned his Grand Vizier, Sinan Pasha, a ruthless and experienced commander. He gave him a simple order: erase Wallachia from the map. An army of unimaginable size was assembled. Estimates vary, but it was likely over 100,000 men, janissaries, sipahis, Akinci raiders, the full, terrifying might of the empire, all marching with a single purpose: to find Michael the Brave and destroy him. Michael had kicked the hornet's nest. Now the swarm was coming. Michael knew he couldn't face the Ottoman horde in an open field. His army, though battle-hardened, was barely 16,000 strong. It would be suicide. So he retreated, drawing Sinan Pasha deeper into Wallachia, scorching the earth as he went, poisoning wells and burning crops. He was looking for the perfect place to make a stand. He found it at Calugareni. It was a terrible place for an army, a muddy, swampy floodplain cut in two by the Neazhlov River. A single narrow bridge was the only way across. It was a bottleneck, a death trap. Here, the Ottomans' vast numbers would count for nothing. Here, courage and desperation could level the playing field. On August 23, 1595, Michael turned his army around. The retreat was over. Sinan Pasha was overconfident. He saw the small Wallachian force and smelled an easy victory. He sent his vanguard forward without proper reconnaissance. As the elite janissaries crowded onto the narrow bridge, Michael's hidden cannons opened up. The effect was devastating. Cannonballs tore through the packed ranks, turning the bridge into a slaughterhouse. But the janissaries were the best infantry in the world. They pressed on, absorbing the losses, and slammed into the Wallachian line holding the far side of the bridge. For hours, the battle raged on that single point, a desperate, brutal melee of steel, mud, and blood. The Wallachians began to buckle under the relentless pressure. The line was about to break. Sinan Pasha committed his reserves, and the sheer weight of numbers was too much. The Wallachians began to fall back. The battle and the country was moments from being lost. It was then that Michael made his move. Seeing the impending disaster, he gathered his personal cavalry reserve, about 400 men, and did what a commander should never do. He led the charge himself. He wasn't a prince directing a battle from the rear. He was a warrior. Wielding a massive battle axe, he personally crashed into the flank of the Ottoman forces crossing the river, creating chaos and confusion. The sight of their prince fighting like a madman in the front ranks electrified the retreating Wallachian soldiers. They rallied. Inspired by their prince, the Wallachians charged back into the fray. The Ottoman flank, hit by Michael's cavalry, collapsed. The forces on the bridge, now being attacked from two sides, panicked. The advance turned into a rout. They scrambled to get back across the bridge, trampling their own men in the process. Sinan Pasha himself was thrown from his horse and was nearly captured, losing his hat and a tooth in the swampy mud before his bodyguards could drag him to safety. The Ottoman army, which had been on the verge of victory just moments before, was now in full, disorganized retreat. Michael had done the impossible. He had broken the Sultan's army. But it was a victory that couldn't last. Michael had won the battle, but the Ottoman army was still immense. He had bloodied its nose, but the beast was far from dead. His own forces were battered and exhausted. He couldn't hold the position. So, under the cover of darkness, Michael made the painful decision to retreat. He had won a legendary tactical victory, but strategically he had to give up his capital, Bucharest, to the enemy. He withdrew into the mountains, beginning a brutal campaign of guerrilla warfare, harassing the Ottoman supply lines and waiting for the reinforcements promised by his new allies. Those allies were Sigismund Bathory, the Prince of Transylvania, and more importantly, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. Michael's war was their opportunity. They saw him as a useful bulldog, a way to bleed the Ottoman Empire on its own frontier without committing the bulk of their own forces. They formed a holy league. Michael, in his desperation, had to accept terms that were humiliating. He had to recognize Sigismund Bathory as his overlord, effectively trading one master for another. But it bought him time, and it brought him fresh troops. With this new combined Christian army, he marched back out of the mountains and drove the Ottomans out of Wallachia for good. For 3 years, a fragile peace held. Michael ruled Wallachia, but he was no longer content. He had fought the Ottomans to a standstill. He had dealt with the powerful princes of Europe. He had learned that he could rely on no one but himself. And he began to dream of something bigger. He saw the 3 Romanian principalities, Wallachia, Transylvania, and Moldavia, constantly played against each other by the great powers. He saw them weak and divided. What if they were one, under one ruler, under him? It was an audacious, almost insane idea. No one had ever united them before. But Michael was no longer the desperate prince fighting for survival. He was now a seasoned conqueror. His opportunity came from chaos. His supposed overlord, Sigismund Bathory, was an unstable ruler who abdicated his throne only to return, then abdicate again. In the power vacuum, his cousin, Cardinal Andrew Bathory, seized control of Transylvania. This was a disaster for Michael. Andrew was backed by Poland and sought peace with the Ottoman Empire, which would leave Wallachia completely isolated. Michael's Christian alliance was dead. Worse, his own nominal master was now an enemy. With the blessing of Emperor Rudolf, who also despised the new pro-Polish prince, Michael did what he did best. He attacked. In the autumn of 1599, he invaded Transylvania. At the Battle of Calugareni, Michael's smaller veteran army faced the larger but less unified Transylvanian force. Michael's troops were loyal to him, hardened by years of war against the Ottomans. Andrei Bathory's army was a mix of Hungarian nobles who distrusted each other. The result was a slaughter. Michael's tactical genius once again won the day. The Transylvanian army was shattered. Andrei Bathory fled the battlefield only to be caught and killed by local peasants who opposed his rule. In a single decisive battle, Michael had conquered a country twice the size of his own. He marched triumphantly into the capital, Alba Iulia. He was now Prince of Wallachia and Transylvania. But 2 crowns were not enough. To the east lay Moldavia, ruled by a prince loyal to Poland. Seeing the political winds shift, the Moldavian army and nobility offered almost no resistance. In May of 1600, Michael's forces swept through the country. In less than 6 months, the impossible had happened. The merchant's son, the debtor prince, the rebel warlord, now ruled all 3 Romanian lands. For the first time in history, Wallachia, Transylvania, and Moldavia were united under a single Romanian ruler. He styled himself Prince of Wallachia, Transylvania, and all the land of Moldavia. He had reached the absolute pinnacle of his power. It was a breathtaking achievement.
He was Napoleon before Napoleon, a unifier who had redrawn the map of Eastern Europe through sheer force of will. He was hailed across Christendom as a hero, the scourge of the Ottomans. But the view from the top of the mountain is precarious. Every direction you look, you see enemies. The Hungarian nobility in Transylvania seethed under the rule of a Wallachian. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth saw him as a dangerous upstart on their border. The Ottoman Empire was merely waiting for a chance to strike back. And his most dangerous enemy was the one who was supposed to be his friend, the Holy Roman Emperor.
Emperor Rudolf had supported Michael when he was a useful pawn against the Ottomans and the Poles. But a united, powerful Romanian state under a charismatic and brilliant military commander? That was not part of the plan. That was a threat. Michael had become too powerful, too independent. So Rudolf unleashed his own general, an Italian mercenary named Giorgio Basta. Basta was everything Michael was not: cold, methodical, and ruthlessly loyal only to his paymaster. While Michael was putting down rebellions, Basta marched his imperial army into Transylvania, claiming he was there to help. It was a lie. He was there to steal Michael's crown.
At the Battle of Miroslav in September 1600, Michael faced the combined forces of Basta's professional army and the Hungarian nobles who had betrayed him. His luck finally ran out. His army was decisively defeated. In a matter of weeks, his grand union crumbled. Moldavia was lost to the Poles. Transylvania was taken by Basta. Wallachia itself was overrun. The man who had ruled 3 countries was now a fugitive, hunted in the very lands he had fought to unite. Everything he had built had turned to ash.
But Michael was not broken. He did the last thing anyone expected. He traveled all the way to Prague, to the court of the very man who had betrayed him, Emperor Rudolf. He went to plead his case. It must have been the most humiliating journey of his life. The celebrated conqueror, now a landless exile, begging for help from his enemy. He spent months in Prague, a political pawn. But the situation in Transylvania changed once again. Sigismund Bathory had returned, backed by the Poles, and had driven Basta out. Suddenly, Rudolf needed Michael again. He needed his bulldog.
In a truly bizarre twist of fate, Emperor Rudolf ordered Michael to team up with the man who had defeated him, Giorgio Basta. Their mission? To drive Sigismund Bathory out of Transylvania. The 2 generals who hated each other formed an uneasy alliance. In August 1601, at the Battle of Calugareni, they met Sigismund's army, and once again Michael proved his military genius. While Basta's troops held the line, Michael led a devastating cavalry charge that shattered the enemy army. It was a stunning victory. Michael had once again reconquered Transylvania for the emperor. He was back. For a few days, it seemed like Michael's fortune had returned. He set up his camp at Campia Terzi, near the city of Turda, and began making plans to reclaim Wallachia. He was the hero of the hour. But Giorgio Basta knew there wasn't room for 2 great commanders in one army, and the emperor had given him secret orders. Michael the Brave, the hero of Christendom, was once again too popular, too powerful, too dangerous. He had served his purpose. He was now a loose end to be tied up permanently. On the morning of August 9th, 1601, a detachment of Basta's mercenaries marched to Michael's tent. They claimed they were there to arrest him. Michael emerged, demanding an explanation. There was no explanation. They fell upon him. Unarmed, caught completely by surprise, the man who had faced down the entire Ottoman army was hacked to death in his own camp by his supposed allies. His head was cut off and presented to Basta. For his troubles, the man who had united the Romanian lands was given a traitor's death.
Michael's union lasted less than a year. His life ended in betrayal and mud. For centuries, he was a footnote in the grand histories of Habsburgs and Ottomans, but his dream never died. 300 years later, when the Romanian people sought to create a modern nation, they looked back to him. They saw the man who first showed them it was possible. The union he forged for a fleeting moment became the blueprint for modern Romania. Was he a visionary hero or a reckless gambler destroyed by his own ambition? Perhaps he was both. But one thing is certain: the merchant's son who paid his debts in blood left an echo that would shape the destiny of a nation. What do you think was his greatest mistake? Let us know in the comments below.